Welcome to the 8th lecture of Subject Direct Taxation, where we are going to continue the Module 2, and Module 2 is nothing but income from salaries. Under this module, as we already know, as per VTU syllabus, introduction, meaning of salary, allowances, which we have already seen in lecture number 7, and deductions against salary also is covered under lecture number 7. Today, we will be continuing the module. So let us see what we will be studying today. Today we will be covering and revising allowances. We will be seeing problems on partly taxable allowances, because fully taxable allowances there is no calculation required, because 100% you need to take the figure in the outer column. And in case of exempt allowances, you need not have any calculation because it is zero. The figure will be obviously be zero. It is completely exempt. So we'll have problems. We'll see problems on partly taxable allowances, and we will see death cum retirement benefits. So we will be covering death cum retirement benefits, which is the E point. D point, perquisites, will take little later once we complete death cum retirement benefits, because perquisite is a little lengthier concept to be explained. Okay, just till this module 2 entirely gets covered, I will be every day showing you this slide. The reason being very simple, because in order to calculate a full-fledged problem on income from the head salaries, this is the format that needs to be registered in your mind. That's the reason I'll be showing you all this format every day. So basic salary, 100% of basic salary you have to take in the outer column. Fees commission, whatever fees commission is received by an employee from his employer, 100% amount you need to take in the outer column. Bonus, 100% amount you need to take in the outer column. Now, whatever is below bonus, allowances. We know allowances are divided into 3 parts. One is taxable allowance, fully taxable allowance, where 100% amount you're going to take it in the outer column. You have partly taxable allowance, where you have to do certain calculations in your working note below this format, and then write only the taxable amount in this outer column. And then you have exempt allowances, which obviously will not come in the outer column. It will either be nil or zero. So today we will be seeing allowances. Next is perquisites, which we will be seeing in detail in the succeeding lectures. And then we will be covering all this today. Out of these, we'll be covering voluntary retirement compensation, retrenchment compensation, and leave encashment. Once you add up all these, you get gross salary. Then there are 3 deductions under section 16. Remember, students, even for format, you will get marks. So there is deduction under section 16, which is a standard deduction of 50,000. Entertainment allowance, this deduction is only given to government employees. And you have professional tax as a deduction, which is the maximum tax is 2,500. Next is when you deduct from gross salary deductions, you get income from the head salary. This I will be revising until we complete the module number 2. So now moving ahead. So this is just a revision before we start solving the problems. Whenever any employee is given a dearness allowance without any calculation, just it is fully taxable, take the entire amount in the outer column and consider it under the head of salaries. So all these allowances that are given on the left hand side that you all can see are fully taxable. Next, fully exempt that you all can see on the right hand side, without giving a second thought, without calculating, just write this and write the amount in the outer column as nil or 0. Next, partly taxable, we know there are only 2, that is house rent allowance and special allowances. In special allowances, we have 15 such allowances, which are partly exempt and partly taxable. Now, in this, most important under allowances is house rent allowance, which is covered under section 10, subsection 13, clause A. So now let us revise this because we'll be solving problems on this now. So let us quickly revise. What is house rent allowance? Allowance that is given by an employer to his employee for the rent that he's paying for residence of his stay in the place where he is providing his service or job. So this is a house rent allowance. Whatever house rent allowance an employee receives from an employer, the 100% amount is not taxable. There is some exemption given. Exemption is based on which city he's staying. If he's staying in metro cities like Delhi, Kolkata, Mumbai, Chennai, then 50% of salary for the relevant period, or actual HRA received, or rent paid minus 10% of salary. Among all these three calculations, whichever is least, he will be given a exemption. If it is other cities, the first 2 points remain the same. It has to be 40% of salary for the relevant period. Relevant period means a period during which he is staying in a rented premises. And salary for the purpose of HRA is basic salary, dearness allowance, only and only if dearness allowance is provided in the terms of employment, and commission. Commission if it is given as a fixed percentage of turnover. See, an employee can receive commission monthly, suppose 2,000 per annum. Then this commission, what he is receiving, is not as a fixed percentage of turnover. If the commission is paid based on the percentage of the turnover of the employer, then only you have to consider while calculating HRA, because salary for the purpose of HRA is basic salary, the earnest allowance if provided in terms of employment, and commission as fixed percentage of turnover. Why am I stressing on this? Because it is very, very important to solve problems on HRA. Okay, we have revised HRA. Now the special, and you need to remember the section number because it will fetch you the complete marks. So please remember the section number. HRA allowance deduction exemption is given under section 10, subsection 13A. Remember the section. Next, special allowances, as we have already seen. Most important among this is the children education allowance and hostel expenditure allowance. So children education allowance, if an employee is receiving from the employer, then what is the exemption limit? Rupees 100 per month. When it is per month, you have to multiply by 12 because a particular previous year or a particular assessment year comprises of 12 months. So per month per child up to maximum of 2 children. So it will be 100 into 12 into 2 because only up to 2 children it is exemption is given. Hostel allowance 300 rupees per month per child up to maximum of 2 children. Rest other allowances also you need to keep in mind. These both are more important. Rest others you will have to also consider. So these were the different allowances, special allowances that we have seen. Now let us go to the problems on allowances. Okay. So problems on allowances, it is a part of the head income from salaries.
Ma'am.
Students, yes?
Ma'am, from next class onwards, please send these problems earlier only, ma'am.
No, these problems will be seen only once you'll understand the problems. Because
No,
if I send earlier...
Ma'am, I'm telling that when you explain the problems in online class, ma'am, we'll have the handouts with us. It is easy to understand for us, ma'am. Otherwise, in the mobile, we can't understand, ma'am, these problems. So I'm asking you.
Okay. So is the screen visible? Okay, I'll do that. Is the screen visible to everyone?
Visible, ma'am. It is visible for everyone, but the font is very small, ma'am. We can't understand. That's what I'm asking you, ma'am.
Okay, I'll try increasing the font also. Likewise, I will try sending the problems also. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
So without wasting much time, let us proceed here.
If you send those problems earlier to us, ma'am, it is very helpful for us, ma'am, to understand.
Okay, done.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. So shall we start? Okay. See, to solve any problem in taxation, you need to remember the provision, as we have seen even in residential status. To solve any problem, first we had to know the provision. So already we have seen all the provisions on allowances. Okay. So now we are clear with the provisions. Now let us begin with the problems. Okay. So problem number 1, Mr. Raj Kumar has the following receipts from his employer. So from this sentence, what do you understand? You understand that the Raj Kumar is an employee and there is some employer. He's employed under some employer and he's getting the following things from his employer. So basic pay is how much? 3,000 per month. Dearness allowance is 600 per month. Commission is 6,000 rupees per annum. Motor car for personal use, that is expenditures made by the employer, rupees 500 per month. House rent allowance he is getting rupees 900 per month. So these are all the things that Raj Kumar is getting from his employer. So find out the amount of HRA eligible for exemption to Mr. Raj Kumar, assuming that he has paid a rent of rupees 1,000 per month for his accommodation at Kanpur, and DA forms part of salary for retirement benefit. So now they're telling us find out the amount of exemption of HRA. Correct? We know that HRA is not 100% taxable. There is certain exemptions under section 10, subsection 13A. I will keep on repeating this section so that it is registered in your mind. Okay, so let us see the solution. Solution is what? The 100% HRA, whatever he's receiving, we will deduct the exemption amount from that and only the balance will be taxable. So HRA received. How much HRA is Raj Kumar receiving? He is receiving a house rent allowance of 900 per month. Now it is per month. So you're going to multiply it with 12. So 900 into 12. HRA received is 10,800. Now, will you take this complete 10,800 in the outer column? No, because this is falling under partly taxable or partly exempt allowances. So you're going to remove the exemption portion and only balance you're going to take it in the outer column. So less exempt under section 10 subsection 13A. Now this, like, you can present the answer in different ways. I'm going to show you the different ways in which you're going to present the answer. One way is just write the exemption under section 10 13A, and in your working note you can show the how you derived at this amount of 7,680. So we will be seeing that working note. Then once you minus the exemption, you get the taxable HRA as 3,120. This 3,120 you're going to take in the format under the heading allowances, below that HRA, and in the outer column you're going to take 3,120. Now let us see the working note. How did we derive at 7,680? Now what is the exemption saying under section 10 subsection 13A? Exemption under section 10 subsection 13A shall be the least of the following three limits. We know that below 3 there are 3 figures that we need to derive, and whichever is a lesser amount or lower amount among the 3, that will be the exemption amount. So first is the actual HRA amount received. What is the actual HRA amount received? 900 into 12, that is 10,800. Second one is rent paid minus 10% of salary. Now rent paid by the employee. Now what is the rent paid by the employee? In the problem it is given, it is 1,000 per month. So 1,000 per month. So obviously it is to be multiplied by 12. So 1,000 into 12 minus 10% of salary for the relevant period. Now what is salary for the purpose of HRA? Now we know salary for the purpose of HRA is basic salary, dearness allowance, and commission only if it is given as a percentage of turnover. Now in this problem, is commission given as a percentage of turnover or it is fixed commission? That Rajkumar will be getting 6,000 per annum is fixed. So it is not given as a percentage of turnover. So salary for the purpose of HRA, we will consider basic salary 3,000 plus dearness allowance 600. Commission we will take it as 0 because it is not given as a fixed percentage of turnover. But these are per month. So you have to multiply it with 12. So rent paid, we know 1,000 into 12 minus 10% of salary for the relevant period. So 10% of basic salary plus dearness allowance into 12. Why am I multiplying into 12? Because here per month is given. So 1,000 into 12 is 12,000 minus 10% of 43,200. Now how did I get 43,200? It is nothing but 3,000 plus 600 into 12. So 10% of 43,200 will give you 4,320. So rupees 12,000 minus rupees 4,320, you get rupees 7,680 under the B point. Now C point is 50% of salary if he's staying in metro city. But let us see which city is he staying. He's staying in Kanpur. So it is not falling under the metro city. So you have to take 40% of salary. So 40% of salary, and you know salary for the purpose of HRA is again basic salary, dearness allowance if it qualifies for retirement benefit, and here it is given that DA forms a part of salary for retirement benefits, and commission as a fixed percentage of turnover. Now in this question, since commission is not given as a fixed percentage of turnover, it is given as annually it is fixed, not basis on the turnover. Therefore, a commission will consider as 0. So 3,000 plus 600 again into 12. And of that salary, you have to take only 40%. So 40% of 43,200 will give you 17,280. So among these three, among 10,800, among 7,680, and among 17,280, which is the lowest amount, that amount will be given as an exemption under section 10 subsection 13A. So obviously 7,680 is the lowest amount. That is the amount we are taking under the main answer calculation, 7,680. Now, note, for the purpose of exemption under section 10 subsection 13A, salary for this purpose means basic salary, dearness allowance, if it is provided in the terms of employment, and commission as a fixed percentage of turnover. But it excludes all other perquisites. Means we need not take motor car. Motor car is a perquisite, is a benefit that is given by the employer to Rajkumar. We need not take that because for HRA calculation, the provision says that you need not take perquisites or other things. You just need to take the three things as salary. So I hope you have understood the problem number 1. Everyone has got it?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now,
Yes,
students, the way you present the answer is left up to you all. Okay. Either you can show the complete calculation in the main answer itself. Okay. Or you can show it down in the working note. It is left up to you all. Answer should be correct, but okay. And the second thing is least of the following three limits. You can either write 40% of salary above and then do the calculation of rent paid minus 10% of salary and then write actual HRA received. So the order in which these three has to be placed is not relevant. You can write in any order. Okay, students. Now moving ahead to the next problem. In the next problem, I'll show you the next way of presentation of your answer, but it is left completely on you. Okay, so problem number 2. X, a resident of Ajmer, receives 48,000 as a basic salary during the previous year 18-19. In addition, he gets 4,800 as dearness allowance, forming part of basic salary. and 7% commission on sales. Sales is nothing but your turnover, students. Remember, 7% commission on sales made by him, and sales made by Mr. X during the relevant previous year is 86,000. And 6,000 Mr. X is getting as house rent allowance from his employer. However, he pays 5,800 as house rent. From the employer, he's getting 6,000 as HRA, but he is actually paying the rent in which his house in which he's staying. He's paying the rent of 5,800. Determine the quantum of exempted HRA. So we have to know what is the exempted HRA. So we know that the exemption of HRA is covered under section 10 subsection 13A. Okay, so this is one more way in which you can present the answer. Solution: computation of taxable HRA of Mr. X for the assessment year 1920, because if previous year is 1819, assessment year is obviously going to be 1920. So first, actual HRA received is how much? 6,000. Here it is given in the problem, 6,000 he is receiving. But is 6,000 completely to be taxable? No, we have exemption. So we have exemption means deduction. So we are going to less exemption. Minimum of the following being exempted under section 10 subsection 13A. So first one is actual amount received. When I say actual amount received means actual HRA received. What is the actual HRA received? It is rupees 6,000. So rupees 6,000. Next, I told you all, the order can be any, but it should be least of these three itself. Next is 40% of salary. Okay, why 40% and not 50%? Because the city in which he's residing is Ajmer. That's the reason it is 40% of salary. Now, salary, what should be the amount of salary for the purpose of HRA? So very, very important again, salary for the purpose of HRA is your basic salary, okay, 48,000 plus your dearness allowance, 4,800 if it is a forming part of the basic salary, and commission only and only if it is given as a fixed percentage of turnover. Now here it is clearly specified that 7% commission will be given on whatever turnover he is making. So he's making a turnover of 86,000. So 7% of 86,000. Once you add these three, 48,000 plus 4,800 plus 7% of 86,000, you will get the salary for the purpose of calculating HRA exemption. So here again note we have given. So see this note, salary for the purpose of HRA is basic salary 48,000, dearness allowance 4,800, commission 7% of 86,000, that is 6,020. So total is how much? 58,820. Now 58,820 into 40% you have to do. So you get 23,528. Next, rent paid minus 10% of salary. So what is the rent he is paying? He is paying rent of 5,800. So 5,800 minus 10% of salary. Now we already calculated salary for the purpose of HRA, which is nothing but 58,820. So 58,820 into 10% is nothing but 5,882. So when you minus this, it's going to be minus 2, minus 82, which is obviously going to be nil. Now, which is the least of all this? Which is the least of 0, 6,000 and 23,528?
Ma'am, 6,000.
6,000, ma'am.
6,000, ma'am.
Okay, very good student. Tell me, is 0 less, 6,000 less, or 23,528 less?
Nil. 0 is less.
0, ma'am.
6,000, ma'am.
Students, oh my God, what is happening to you all? Students,
0.
tell me. Yes, the answer is 0. Nil is
Ma'am,
nothing
0.
but 0. 0, it is not 6,000. 0 is less than 6,000, no? 6,000 is a bigger amount than 0. And I'm telling you minimum of the following. When I'm telling least of the following means the minimum amount, not the maximum, minimum amount. So among these three, which is the minimum amount? 0. So 6,000 less he's getting an exemption of 0 means taxable is 6,000. So hence the exemption under section 10 subsection 13A is nil. Did you all understand problem number 2?
Yes, ma'am.
Everyone,
Yes,
are you all
ma'am.
clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you
Yes,
all
ma'am.
clear with your 0 and 6,000?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now let us move ahead. So everyone understood how HRA is to be calculated. Presentation is left up to you all. Okay. Now let us go to special allowances. Okay. So problem number 3. Mr. Lalu Singh received education allowance of rupees 80 per month. So Lalu Singh is an employee and he is receiving education allowance of 80 rupees per month for his first child, 90 per month for his second child, and 120 per month for his third child. He also received hostel allowance of 1,000 per month. Find the taxable children education allowance and hostel allowance. Now we know that children education allowance and hostel allowance both fall under special allowances, which is partly taxable. Now if it is partly taxable means there is some exemption portion. Now what is that exemption portion? We have already seen in our provisions. Okay, so for education allowance, what is the exemption, students? Rupees 100 per month per child up to maximum of 2 children, correct? And hostel allowance, what is the exemption for hostel allowance? Rupees 300 per month per child up to a maximum of 2 children. Okay, so now what is the actual hostel allowance he is receiving? 1,000 per month. So 1,000 per month means, obviously per month means you have to multiply it with 12. So 1,000 into 12 is 12,000. Now, will you take this 12,000 completely in the outer column when you're calculating income from the head salaries? No. You're going to less some exemption which is given. So less exemption. What is the exemption given for hostel allowance? Rupees 300 per month for up to 2 children. Now he has 3 children. That is not to be considered. Exemption is given only up to 2 children. So 300 into 2 because 2 children into 12 because it is given per month. So 300 into 2 into 12 is nothing but 7,200. So the taxable amount of hostel allowance that you need to take in the outer column in your main working is 4,800. Is this clear, students? Is hostel allowance clear? Yes, students, is hostel allowance clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Please explain once again.
Anyone wants explanation once again?
Yes, ma'am.
Because, okay, I'll just go help you all go through the provision. Okay, here we have seen hostel expenditure exemption is given of rupees 300 per month per child, maximum 2 children, correct? Yes, students. Now, hostel allowance completely is not taxable. You have an exemption portion. So we'll see what is the hostel allowance received. It is 1,000 per month. So 1,000 per month is nothing but 1,000 into 12. That is 12,000. And exemption is given only for of rupees 300 in respect of hostel allowance. That too 300 it is per month, per child, and maximum for 2 children. So 300 into 2 into 12, you got 7,200. So from 12,000, whatever Lalu Singh is receiving, he's getting an exemption of 7,200. So what will be taxable amount? Taxable amount will be 4,800. Is this clear, students?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Next
Yes,
is
ma'am.
children education allowance. Okay. Let us see how much first he is receiving. Later we will see what is the exemption is getting. Then when we deduct from what he is receiving, we deduct the exemption portion, then we will get what is the taxable portion. So let us see what he is receiving. He is receiving 800 per month for his first children. So sorry, 80 per month for his first child. So see here, 80 into 12 plus. For his second child, he is receiving 90 per month. So 90 into 12 per month. PM is per month. If it is given per annum, then you need to take the figure as it is. But since it is per month, you're multiplying it with 12. Plus, for his third child, he is receiving 120 per month. So 120 into 12. So what is the actual children education allowance he's receiving from his employer? Once you add all this, multiply and add all this, you get 3,480 rupees. Now, is 3,480 rupees 100% taxable? No. We know that under special allowance, they are falling under partly taxable. There is some exemption portion. In case of children education allowance, the exemption portion is how much? 100 per month per child, okay, for 2 children. Now, students, now pay attention. This is a little important. Your 80 per month, is he exceeding the exemption portion? No. Here it is 90 per month. Is he exceeding the exemption portion? No. Here it is 120 per month. So he's exceeding the exemption portion. That is why for one children, 100 exemption. Plus for the second child, only 90 exemption is given. Why? Because the exemption limit is only 100. But if he's getting allowance below 100, obviously he'll not get exemption above 100. We cannot take 100 into 2 into 12. Why? Because he's not getting only 100 as children education allowance. That's the reason we have taken 100 plus 90. Maximum exemption will be the limit of exemption, that is 100, or actual education allowance given, whichever is lower side, that is the exemption he's going to get. So 100 plus 90. Why we didn't consider 80? Because only for 2 children exemption can be given. So 100 plus 90 into 12. So the exemption limit is 2,280 rupees. When you minus this to the taxable children education allowance is 1,200. Therefore, under the heading of allowances, what is the total allowance? 4,800, that is hostel allowance plus children education allowance. So total taxable allowance is 6,000. Now, why we didn't take this child? Why we didn't take the first child who's getting 80 per month? Why did we select the 90 per month? Because 80 per month is the lowest one, okay, to avail the higher education. So your note, children education allowance is allowed for any 2 children of SSC. Therefore, education allowance of the first child, which is the lowest one, 80 only, is not considered to avail higher education. Any 2 children, so we have to see whatever is benefiting the SSC, we need to take accordingly. If we could have taken 80 here, then your exemption portion would be less. So accordingly, we have taken the higher allowances that he is receiving. Now, did you understand this children education allowance? Is it understood by everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
You all understood why we did not take 100 into 2, right? Because he is receiving less than 100. That's the reason. Okay. So moving ahead to the next problem.
Ma'am,
Any doubt? Anyone in the
yeah, ma'am, I
previous?
had a question.
Okay, tell me.
Ma'am, why we took 120 into 12?
Where you took 120 into 12? This
Children
your...
education allowance.
Okay. See,
Yes, ma'am.
yeah, let me explain. Children education allowance, what is the actual allowance? allowance is giving minus the exemption will be the taxable allowance. Clear? Now, what is the actual allowance he is receiving? Actual allowance he is receiving is 80 per for children, 90 per month for second children, and third children 120 per month. So this he is actually receiving. From the actual amount what he is receiving, we have to minus only exemption. That exemption is given only for 2 children. Full amount whatever is actually receiving, we have to consider everything. Even if it was 5 children, we had to consider actual allowance, actual money whatever receiving for all 5 children. But when you're giving exemption, you have to only give for 2 children. So did you understand why did we consider this exemption only for 2 children?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. Let us move ahead to the next problem. Problem number 4. Mr. and Mrs. X have 3 children and 2 of them are studying. Both Mr. and Mrs. X are working in A Limited and getting children education allowance rupees 500 per month and hostel allowance 1000 per month. Compute the taxable children education allowance and hostel allowance. When you get such problems, first you have to think that this is an allowance. Now under which heading it is falling? Fully taxable? Fully exempt? No, it is falling under partly taxable. Means there is some amount of exemption. Now in case of children education allowance, what is the exemption limit? Rupees 100 per month per child, maximum 2 children. Only exemption will be given. Hostel allowance, what is the exemption given? Rupees 300 per month per child, maximum 2 children. So how to calculate the taxable portion? First take the complete amount that they are receiving minus the exemption. The balance will be taxable portion which you will be taking in the outer column in your main working. So see here, Mr. X and Mrs. X. Now, education allowance. How much Mr. X and Mrs. X is receiving? 500 into 12. So this they are actually receiving. From actually whatever they are receiving, you have to deduct the exemption portion. Now, what exemption in case of education allowance? Rupees 100 per month per child. So 100 into 12 into 2. So 2400 is the exemption for Mr. X. For Mrs. is 2400. So when you minus, you're getting the taxable education allowance as 3600. So when you compute the income from salary for X, you just need to take education allowance as 3600 taxable. And for Mrs. X, 3600 as taxable. Next, hostel allowance. What is the amount of hostel allowance received by Mr. and Mrs. X? 1000 per month. So per month, therefore 1000 into 12, which is nothing but 12,000 for Mr. X and Mrs. X also 12,000. Both are receiving in the problem. Mr. and Mrs. X both are receiving. Less exemption. Exemption is how much for hostel allowance? Students rupees 300 per month per up to maximum of 2 children. 2 children, therefore multiplying by 2. So exemption out of 12,000, 7,200 is the exemption portion. So taxable is 4,100. Similarly for Mrs. X, the same calculation because they're getting the same amount. So what is the total taxable allowance? So if you add all the taxable allowances, 3,600 plus 4,800, it is 8,400 for Mr. X and 8,400 for Mrs. X. So have you understood this problem, students? See, in our provisions, is it mentioned anywhere that only one parent will get, the other parent will not get the exemption, or only the child who will exemption, child who is not studying will not get the exemption? So this all is not given, students. So therefore we are ignoring all this. 2 of them are not studying. Mr. and Mrs. X both are getting the allowance. So we are not considering all this because in our provision, nothing as such is mentioned. Provision, what is mentioned? They will get exemption of 100 in case of children education, 300 in case of still maximum 2 children they per month. So just don't pay attention to whether the children, whether they are studying, not studying, whether husband wife is receiving the same amount or not. That is to be considered. Have you all understood this problem?
Yes,
Solution to this
ma'am.
problem.
Yes, ma'am.
Everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. So we have completed with problems on allowances. Students, what you all will get is a full-fledged problems on income from salary. So these small working notes will be and forming part of your main answer. Okay. So once we study this small, once we study how to calculate individually all of these, then you can club all the working notes and then the main answer will be then you will get the actual main answer. That is the reason individually I'm dealing with each of these. So we have completed with allowances. Now moving ahead with death cum retirement benefit. Now what do you all understand by death cum retirement benefit, student? Can anyone tell me what do you mean by death cum retirement benefit? Quick, we are just left with 10 minutes. The benefit given to an employee either on his death or on his retirement. Correct? So death cum retirement benefit is nothing but benefit which is given to an employee, because we are now studying with in module number 2 income from salaries, where there is an employer-employee. So obviously any benefit given by the employer to the employee on the death or retirement. So here we have different death cum retirement benefits, that is voluntary retirement compensation, retrenchment compensation, leave encashment, which is also named as leave salary, gratuity, uncommuted pension, commuted pension, and provident fund. So all these are either given on death or either given on retirement of the employee by the employer. Now, all this is forming part of your income under the head salaries. Now, why is this 3 marked in red? Because these 3 we will be covering in today's lecture. Only the provisions, problems on these 3 we will be seeing in next lecture. So what is quickly we'll just revise what is the meaning of all this. When is voluntary retirement compensation given, students? When a particular employee is voluntarily retired from an organization and he has served well in the organization. So when he is retiring voluntarily, he is taking the retirement. The company, the employer will give him some amount in the form of compensation for the work for voluntarily retiring from the organization. Next, what is retrenchment compensation? When any employee is forcefully removed from the organization because of the losses in the business, or if he is transferred to some other location, he's usually been compensated by employer. So it is called retrenchment compensation. What is leave encashment or leave salary? Every employee is entitled to leaves. Okay, so the leaves that he has not taken, he will get the money, he will encash the money of the leaves that he is not taken. So it is leave encashment. Gratuity is given the appreciation of services to the loyal employees who have been working in the organization for more than 5 years when they retire. Next, uncommuted pension and commuted pension. It is a periodic payment that is made to them once they retire. Okay, if the lump sum amount is given, it is called uncommuted. If partly it is given, it's called commuted. Next, provident is nothing but fund which will help which will benefit the employee. Okay, for the savings that he will keep on making in the fund, the accumulation in the fund, which will benefit him either on his death to his family or either on his retirement, he will get the provident fund amount. So all these are, I hope you have understood the meaning of all this. More important is you understand the meaning, whatever is literally given in the books, or you not by that, you need to understand what these terms stands for. So let us quickly see voluntary retirement compensation. Suppose if I am an employee and I'm receiving voluntary retirement compensation, so that money will fall under which head of income? It will fall under the income from head salaries, and it is not 100% taxable. So all these amounts is not 100% taxable. There is some exemption given. So that is what we will be seeing now. What is the exemption given under voluntary retirement, retrenchment compensation, and leave encashment. So suppose if I'm voluntarily retiring from an organization and I've got compensation, 100% I will not charge it to tax. There is certain exemption. Exemption is under section 10, subsection 10C. Remember, exemption under voluntary retirement compensation is under section 10, subsection 10C. Of the is compensation received, whatever actual compensation I'm receiving or received during my voluntary retirement, or rupees 5 lakh, 3 months salary into completed years of service. Suppose I want to voluntarily retire after 35 years of my service. Okay. So 3 months salary I have to take into 35 years. How many years of service I have completed in the organization? You have to multiply with that many number of years. Last drawn salary into remaining months of service left. Usually when I want to take voluntary retirement, okay, the employee will not go at the end moment and tell that from tomorrow I won't be, or from tomorrow I want to retire and I won't be working in the organization. He has to prior inform the employer about his voluntary retirement. So till the period is remaining of the service that he has to still render to the organization. Maybe 6 months before he has informed the organization that he wants to retire. So remaining months of service left is 6 months. So last drawn salary means what is the salary he has last drawn into remaining months of service left. What is the salary? We know salary for the purpose of HRA. Now let us know what is the salary for the purpose of voluntary retirement compensation. Salary for purpose of voluntary retirement compensation is again basic salary plus dearness allowance if it is qualifying for retirement benefit, and commission as a fixed percentage of turnover. So remember, for HRA and voluntary retirement compensation, salary calculation remains the same. So quickly we will just understand this provision once again. Voluntary retirement compensation exemption is given under section 10, subsection 10C. Least of the following, when I say least of the following means minimum of the following, lower of the following amounts will be given as exemption. Compensate what the employee is receiving, or rupees 5,000, or 3 months salary into completed years of service, or last drawn salary into remaining months of service left. Problems on this we will be seeing in the next lecture. Okay, so moving ahead. Retrenchment compensation. Now, what do you mean by retrenchment compensation? When an employee is removed from the organization because the business is shutting down because of maybe any pandemic, or maybe the employee is being shifted to some other location, transferred to some other location, and if the company is giving him some compensation, some amount, it is called as retrenchment compensation. Now, retrenchment compensation amount, whatever the employee is receiving, it is not 100% taxable. There is some exemption given. Exemption is given under section 10, subsection 10B. This compensation will be charged tax in the hands of the employee under the head income from salaries. So least of the following is exempt: actual compensation received, or 5,000, or 15 days average pay into completed years of service, and part thereof in excess of 6 months. So in excess of 6 months, you consider 1 year of service. Suppose I have served for 31 years and 6 months. So you have to consider this as 32 years. Suppose if I have for 1 year and 2 months, since 2 months is less than 6 months, you have to just consider my completed year of service as 31 years. So remember, if it is more than 6 months, consider it 1 full year, and if it is less than 6 months, consider it as 0 year. So again, retrenchment compensation exemption under section 10. Section 10, leave the following, only 3 is given. Actual compensation received rupees 5,000, 15 days average pay into completed year of service. Now, the problems on this again will be seen in the next tool. Today we have just seen the provision. I will be revising the provision once again in the next module. Next lecture, sorry, not next module, next lecture. Okay. Next is leave encashment. Now, what is leave encashment? We know that whatever leaves an employee is entitled and he's not taking that leaves, so he's going to encash those leaves. It's called leave encashment. And another name for leave encashment is nothing but leave salary. Leave encashment is covered under section 10, subsection 10 AA. Exemption covered under section 10, subsection 10 AA. Now let us understand leave encashment. Suppose if you're encashing the leave during your service. Now I'm providing service to JNU, I'm continuing with the service. So during the service, if I'm encashing my leaves, encashing means the leave, whatever I've not taken, I'm taking it in the form of money. So if I'm encashing leave, and if I am the employee of a government organization or a non-government organization, the complete amount is taxable, fully taxable. Remember students, during my service, if cashing my leave, irrespective I'm government or non-government employee, it is going to be fully taxable. Now suppose if I'm receiving the leave encashment at the time of retirement. Now when I retire, means where I'm no more giving service to the organization, where I'm retiring, and if I'm government employee, then it is fully exempt at the time of retirement. But suppose if I'm a non-government employee, if I'm working under a private institution, then least of the following is exempt. Now when I say least of the following means minimum or lower of these four is exempt. What is this for? Rupees 3 lakh, leave salary actually received, leave cash equivalent of leave standing at the credit of the employee based on the 10 months salary, and 10 months salary based on the average salary of last 10 months preceding retirement. Immediately before your retirement, 10 months salary you got to take, or cash equivalent of leave standing at the credit of the employee based on the last 10 months salary. Maximum 30 days you have to consider for every year of service. Now, here again the word salary is used. Now, what is the meaning of salary for the purpose of calculating leave encashment exemption? So, salary means basic salary, dearness allowance if provided in terms of employment, and commission as calculated at fixed percentage of turnover. So, you got to remember that salary for the purpose of HRA, voluntary retirement compensation, and leave encashment is the same. Okay. So let us just revise this in the form of chart. Leave encashment, if it is received during the period of service, fully taxable. If it is received on retirement by a government employee, then fully exempt. If it is received by any other employee means employee other than government employee, and then the least of the following is exempt. What is the least of the following? Rupees lakh or actual leave salary received, or 10 months salary on the basis of average salary of last 10 months preceding retirement. Immediately before retirement, what is the 10 months salary? Or cash equivalent of unavailed leave based on the 10 months average salary to the credit at the time of retirement. So among these four, whichever is the low amount, you will get as an exemption for leave encashment, and only the balance will be taxable. This is just the provision that we need to remember when we solve problems. You'll be able to understand better. So today we have seen allowances, problems on allowances. We have seen death cum retirement benefit. Under that we have seen three. We have seen voluntary retirement compensation, retrenchment compensation, and leave encashment.